Let's now learn some more JavaScript fundamentals. And in this video in particular, let's learn about some basic operators. And let's start by defining what an operator actually is. So an operator basically allows us to transform values or combine multiple values and really do all kind of work with values. And there are many categories of operators, like mathematical operators, comparison operators, logical operators, assignment operators, and many more. So in this video, let's look at some of these types of operators, starting with mathematical or arithmetic operators. So we already used the plus and minus operators, but of course we can do all arithmetic operations. So we can also do multiplication, division, and many more. And let's use the minus operator to calculate ages based on a person's birth year. So let's say age Jonas equals, so the current year, and I will simply assume that right now it's 2037, so that's far in the future, but let's make this a bit fun. And then minus a birth year. So let's say 1991. Okay, and then let's just quickly log it to the console. So age Jonas, using the auto completion here. And so my age is 46, at least if we are currently in 2037. Okay. Now let's do the same for someone else. So let's say age Sarah. And notice how we're using nicely descriptive variable names here. So the age of Jonas and the age of Sarah, instead of, for example, saying age 1 and age 2. So again, right now it's 2037, and then let's say Sarah was born in 2018. So let's log her age to the console as well. And we could now write this same line as this. So again, console.log, but we can actually also log multiple values at the same time. So for that, we just write a comma like this, and then the second value. And we could do even more by adding more commas. So here we could then log something else. So give it a save. And so here we see now 46 and 19 years. Great. So that's how we used the minus operator to solve a very simple problem. In this case, simply to calculate an age. However, we can actually do better here. That's because we have this value here that is repeating itself. So this year, 2037, is appearing both here and here. And so that's not good because we are repeating this value. So if the year now changes, then we would have to change it in these both places. And we don't like that. And so that's why we have the concept of variables. So instead of having this value here, let's say now, and then we assign this value to the now variable. Okay? And notice how I'm always by default using const. Okay? And that's because I'm not changing any of these variables here anywhere in my code. Only if I needed to change them, I would switch to let. Okay, and now here I can replace this one with now and this one. And it should work the same, and it does. Great, so that's a very good use case for a variable right there. And of course, we can use all kinds of different math operations. So let's say console.log. And now we could go ahead and do age Jonas times 2. So using this asterisk or star. Or we could also do age Jonas and divide it by 2. And notice how these are two different calculations here. So one calculation and another one, or basically another operation. And that's because, as I mentioned before, we can log different values at the same time in one console.log. So here we are creating one value, and here we are creating a second value. Let's actually divide it by 10. And then let's also use the exponentiation operator. So for example, 2 to the power of 3. Okay, and here we can use a comment to explain what this means. So that's a nice use case. So 3 means 2 to the power of 3, which is equal to 2 times 2 times 2. So 3 times this. So this should be 8, right? Let's try that. And indeed, 46, which is Jonah's age times 2, is 92. Then divided by 6 is 4.6. So that's this. And then 2 to the power of 3 is indeed 8. Nice. Next, there is another use case that we didn't use yet for the plus operator. And that's because we can use the plus operator to join strings, or in other words, to concatenate different strings. So let's create 2 variables. First name equals Jonas, and the last name equals Schmettmann. And now I can concatenate these 2 strings using plus. So let's log that to the console. So first name plus last name. And let's see. And indeed, we have now one big string with both of the names together. So both of the strings that we declared earlier. But what if we wanted a space in between there? Well, that's not too hard. All we need to do is to create another string, which is just a space, and then concatenate it here with these 2. And we can actually do that right here. So we want this string, first name, which is just Jonas. Remember, the JavaScript engine will simply replace this string with this one. Then we create an empty string, or actually a string with a space, and then we add that one to last name. So that's going to be Jonas plus a space plus Schmettmann. Let's see. And indeed, that's exactly the result that we were after. Now there's actually a better way of doing this kind of concatenation of strings, which is called template strings. But let's focus on operators now. Okay, so this is a very useful one that we actually use quite often. So another type of operator is actually the type of operator, which we already used up here. So I'm not going to do that again. So remember, here we had the type of operator. And that would then give us the type of the value. So we already know how that one works. So let's move on to the next category, which are assignment operators. And the most straightforward assignment operator is just the equal sign. So let's say let x equal 10 plus 5. And so this equal sign here is actually itself an operator. All right. So in this line of code, we do actually have 2 operators. We have the plus and then the equal. Now in this case, x will be assigned 15 because the plus operator is executed before the assignment operator. Okay, and that's based on a couple of rules about operator precedence that I'm going to show you in the next video. So let me actually show that to you so that it indeed works, as I told you. And yeah, so it's 15. So 10 plus 5 is done first, and then the result of this operation, which is 15, will then be assigned to x. And so that itself is another operator. But there are more assignment operators. So let me show one to you, which is this one, x plus equal 10. So we know that at this point, after this line, x is 15, right? So let's write that as a comment. And then we have this next line. So this weird x plus equal. So what does plus equal actually mean? Well, let's write that again as a comment. So what this means is x equal x plus 10. So instead of having to write all of this, we can simply write x plus equal 10. All right, and so x should now be 25 because this x here from the previous step is 15. So here we are basically reassigning the x value. That's why I used a let here. So again, x at this point here will be 15, and then 15 plus 10 should be 25. And indeed, it's now 25. So let's write that result here so that we can keep track as I show you more operators. Because as you might imagine, there are more operators like this. For example, there is x and then times equal 4. And I hope you can imagine that this will mean x is equal x times 4. And this should be, in this case, 25 times 4, so 100. Let's check. And yes, it works. The same operator also exists with divided here, but I'm not going to go into that one. So to finish, I will just show you the x plus plus operator. And what this will do is x equals x plus 1. So let's see. And yes, we have 101. And we also have x minus minus. So if we do that twice now, what do you think will happen here? And indeed, we get 99. So minus minus is basically just the opposite of plus plus. So this one will decrease the value by 1, and so we end up with 99. Okay, so let's actually write that these are assignment operators, and these are, let's say, math operators. And so now let's talk about comparison operators. And these are pretty great. So basically we use comparison operators to produce Boolean values. So let me show you how that works, and then I'm sure it will make sense that the result of a comparison operator should be a Boolean. So let's say we are trying to figure out if H. Jonas is greater than H. Sarah, right? So what could the result of this be if we think about this logically? So H. Jonas can either be greater than Sarah or not. And so if it is greater, then the result of this should be true. And if it's not, then it should just be false. So indeed, the result of this one is true. That's because Jonas' age is 46 and Sarah is 19. So this is basically like asking the operator, is the age of Jonas greater than the age of Sarah? And the operator will then essentially reply with yes, it is, which means true, or no, it's not, which means false. And this can be very useful later when we start taking decisions with our code based on conditions like this. Okay? Now, of course, there's also the less than, so the opposite, and also there is greater equal or less than equal. So basically we have this one, then we have this one, then we have greater equal and less than or equal. So let's see a nice application of the greater than equal operator. So let's say we wanted to test if Sarah is of full age. So that means that she must be at least 18 years old. And at least means that she is greater than 18 or exactly 18. And so we can use the appropriate operator for that. So greater or equal 18. Okay, so 18 should already be included, and that's why we have this equal here. So this should be true. And yes, it is. So if we make her 1 year younger, so let's say she was born in 2019, then her age is 18, as you see here, and she is still of full age. So it's still true here, and that's because we included 18 here in the range, basically by using this equal sign. But now, if we made her born in 2020, she would be 17, and then this should turn out to be false. So let's check that, and yes, now it's false. Great. Now, keep in mind that in real development, we would actually store these results here. So, for example, the result of this comparison operator, or this one here, we would store these results in variables and not just always log their results to the console, okay? But in this case, I just want you to show how all of this works. And so we need the console because really all we want to do is to see the results because we're still learning, okay? We could also just do all of this right here in the console immediately, but then we would kind of lose the record of what we're learning, and it would be not so easy to scroll up and down, okay? But of course, we could just do this, right? We could just write age Sarah greater or equal 18, and we would still get the same result. And this works because the console actually has access to all the variables that is running in the current browser tab, right? So all the variables that we have here, like first name, for example, they are all right here. We can even auto-complete them, okay? But then again, if we would reload this page now, then all we just did would be lost. And of course, we could also simply, as I said, just store these results if we needed them later in our code. So is full age, and then we could do this. And so this variable would be the one holding the Boolean value then. And actually, as you see here in this pop-up, VS Code is so smart that it figures out automatically that this variable here is going to be a Boolean because of the code that we wrote here, which of course has a Boolean as a result. Okay, so now just to finish, let's say that we don't want the intermediate age variables and do this kind of comparison here all in one go. So this here. So let me show that to you in the code. So again, imagine we have a lot of code and we don't want to calculate these ages here separately. So we could just do now minus 1991 and then test if it's greater than now minus 2020. Or let's actually put it back to 2019 as we had before, or actually 2018, I think. So this now is basically just the same as this here. We simply are doing it now all in one step. So this code is the same as this, as it's highlighted here, and this is the same as this one. And so this whole line of code is essentially the same as doing this. Now the big question here is, how does JavaScript know if it should do the math first or if it should do the comparison first, right? Because we could think that the first thing to do is to calculate this, so basically 46, and then JavaScript could compare that 46 to now right away, right? That's what would happen if the operation would simply proceed from left to right. But we will see that it doesn't. So we will see that this actually works just fine, right? And so JavaScript has some way of knowing that it should first do this operation, then this one, so that it has the two numbers, and then only at the end, once it has the two ages, it will compare them with this operator in the middle. So how does that work? Well, that's what we're going to talk about right in the next video.